Next up, to explain what they have learned from the works of the world's greatest planners, writers, and arts directors, otherwise known as Hemingway, Dickens, and Michelangelo, please welcome Andrew Robertson, President, CEO of BBDO Worldwide, and David Lubars, Chairman and Chief Creative Officer, BBDO North America.
Afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. We only just made it, but I'm very glad we did. The genesis of this presentation is some lengthy evenings that David and I used to spend in a hotel called the Townsend in Birmingham, Birmingham, Michigan. It's just outside Detroit. We spent quite a bit of our time there for a while. And for some strange reason, we developed a very weird amaretto habit. After we'd eaten, we would sit down and have amaretto with ice and a slice of orange. I don't know why. We only ever do it there, but we used to do it there all the time. And we got into that game, that conversation that you have about who you'd most like to have dinner with, living or dead. And we worked our way through, Dorothy Parker and Bill Clinton, and in my case, Stalin. And then we moved on from that to say, well, wouldn't it be good to think about who you'd most like to have dinner with in the business? So we started off with that, and I thought Maurice would be a great guy to have dinner with. Sorry, go back one. No, back. I thought Maurice would be a great guy to have dinner with because he's such an elegant, sophisticated man, and you could absolutely guarantee that you'd go to one of the best restaurants in the world.
But then we decided that the perfect hair was intimidating. It'd be great to dine with royalty, with Sir Martin.
Yeah, I think it would be good, and the only problem, though, is after you had dinner with him, he'd make you sign a contract that said that you couldn't have dinner with anybody else for 12 months. So then we thought, what about Roth?
And I thought, wow, now David Lee Roth would be a fun person to have dinner with.
But it was the wrong Roth. We decided against that one.
Yeah, not as good.
And then David Jones was somebody that I liked. I'd worked with him a lot. And I knew he'd be good company for dinner, but the only problem is he would insist on bringing Kofi Annan and Bob Geldof with him.
And me, I never heard of him, so Now, this would be the best dinner ever.
Not just the best dinner, this would be the best event ever. So we had that one.
So we decided, okay, well, maybe there's even more people we'd want to have a lunch with and dinner. And we thought about some of our favorite authors and artists, and we thought, wow, they would make a great agency.
And here's why.
So let's see the context of why they'd be great. This is a chart, even though many of you aren't from the U.S. In the U.S., in years, how long it took for 50% penetration of certain technologies. In other words, it took 70 years for half the country to get a telephone, 50 years for half the country to get electricity, 30 for a television, 10 internet, 5 Facebook. So things are moving very quickly now.
There's an awful lot of content out there, as you all know. This is, in years, how long it would take you to watch all of the video on YouTube. 1,700 years of content on YouTube. Every 60 days, more video is loaded up onto YouTube than was created in the first 60 years of television by the 3 network broadcasters in the US.
In fact, there are 65,000 videos loaded onto YouTube every day. So it's just an enormous amount.
There are 48,000 photographs loaded up per minute, 36 billion per year, 36 billion photographs a year.
There were 25 billion tweets sent in 2011.
And 107 trillion emails, of which 89% was spam.
So it's just an overwhelming, crushing amount of stuff happening really quickly. So how do you deal with that? Well, the reason we picked the people we liked is because they were amazing storytellers. Jean-Luc Godard, 40 years ago, the great filmmaker, said, sometimes reality is too complex, so stories is what gives it form. The old Hopi Indian proverb, those who tell the stories rule the world. Some stories may be unjustly forgotten, none are unjustly remembered. And these are all kind of right-brain creative types, but even in the scholarly world, the guy Dr. Mark Turner, who's the professor of cognitive science at the University of Maryland, said, stories are the building blocks of human thought. It's the way the brain organizes itself. So you need to tell a story.
Which is how we picked our first agency partner.
Dickens. So Dickens obviously was an amazing storyteller. And the thing about him is, it wasn't just conveying, like telling you something. It was putting you in the situation. For those of you who've read David Copperfield, the first 100 pages are the most extraordinary, passionate, outrageous recreation of what it feels like to be a child. It's amazing that he didn't just tell the story, he became a child for you. And this first film here is an amazing, equally good way of showing what it's like to be a dad.
Are you ready for your big party today? Huh?
So when you look at the work of Dickens, which a lot of people have done and studied it very closely, there are four very important elements that go into his work and his writing that make him such a great storyteller. He creates unforgettable characters. Oliver Twist, Thomas Gradgrind, unforgettable characters. He generates very compelling plots. There's always an element of social commentary, and it's always populist entertainment. I'm one of those guys who didn't really know much about Dickens, but I thought he wrote books, but he didn't write books. He wrote serialized stories, and they were serialized in very popular newspapers. They were serialized in the equivalent of, you know, The Sun and The Post, not in the New Yorker. And he invented the concept of the cliffhanger, because at the end of every week he had to write something that would bring people back the following week to read the following week's episode, which then, when they were all put together, became these wonderful 400-page books. But on the subject of unforgettable plots, these two guys, Carlton Cuse and Daniel Lindenhoff, they were the creators of a television show called Lost, which was a fantastically successful transmedia thriller, I guess you'd call it. Very compelling series. And they claimed that they learned everything they needed to learn from Dickens. And most particularly, they said they learned that audiences don't fall in love with plots, they fall in love with characters, unforgettable characters. On this stage, 2 years ago, the brilliant writer Aaron Sorkin talked about why he was moving, and a lot of talent was moving to television. And then a year later, he launched a new TV series called Newsroom. And in the opening 3 minutes of it, he creates, I think rather brilliantly, he creates a compelling character, Will.
say why America is the greatest country in the world?
Diversity and opportunity.
Lewis?
Freedom and freedom. So let's keep it that way.
Well, why is America
Not the greatest country in the world, Professor. That's my answer.
You're saying...
Yes.
Let's talk about...
Fine. Sharon, the NEA is a loser. Yeah, it accounts for a penny out of our paycheck, but he gets to hit you with it anytime he wants. It doesn't cost money. It costs votes. It costs airtime and column inches. You know why people don't like liberals? Because they lose. If liberals are so fucking smart, how come they lose so goddamn always?
Hey.
And with a straight face, you're gonna tell students that America is so star-spangled awesome that we're the only ones in the world who have freedom? Canada has freedom. Japan has freedom. The UK, France, Italy, Germany, Spain, Australia, Belgium has freedom. So 207 sovereign states in the world, like 180 of them have freedom.
All right.
And yeah, you, sorority girl, just in case you accidentally wander into a voting booth one day, there's some things you should know. And one of them is, there is absolutely no evidence to support the statement that we're the greatest country in the world. We're 7th in literacy, 27th in math, 22nd in science, 49th in life expectancy, 178th in infant mortality, 3rd in median household income, number 4 in labor force, and number 4 in exports. We lead the world in only 3 categories: number of incarcerated citizens per capita, number of adults who believe angels are real, and defense spending, where we spend more than the next 26 countries combined, 25 of whom are allies. Now, none of this is the fault of a 20-year-old college student, but you nonetheless are, without a doubt, a member of the worst generation ever. So when you ask what makes us the greatest country in the world, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Yosemite?
And then shortly before that went on air, Wyden and Kennedy produced this brilliant commercial for last year's Olympics.
Greatness. It's just something we made up. Somehow we've come to believe that greatness is a gift reserved for a chosen few, for prodigies, for superstars, and the rest of us can only stand by watching. You can forget that. Greatness is not some rare DNA strand. It's not some precious thing. Greatness is no more unique to us than breathing. We're all capable of it. All of us.
The next of the 4 things, compelling plots. So it was Tom Hanks on this stage last year, I believe, who said, the essence of a great story is you constantly surprise your audience, but then when it's all done, it was obvious. See what you think of this.